So I was just finishing up talking about Joan of Arc. I apologize again for my cold that won't leave, which I've had off and on for like 2 years now. Anyways, so um, uh, Joan of Arc, she, I think that almost everyone has been fascinated by her story. That a girl who's the age of my daughter now, my daughter's going to be 17, and here she is, a French girl leading a French insurgency against uh, English invaders. And she claimed to have hear voices from God telling her to do so. But, regardless of what was really going on in her head, whether she was telling those stories just to make them up or she actually did hear these voices, whatever the case, she definitely defied uh, um, gender expectations. And as you were reading the textbook, I'm sure you noticed the way those terrible English court judges were with her when she gets captured. And they want her to wear a dress, if you read that, where she would dress up as a boy and she was able to lead by kind of defeminizing herself. Um, and the judges couldn't, they were these church officials were trying to find something to pin on her, and they were really desperate. That's the impression you get, at least by reading these accounts. Her hearing voices shouldn't have been a problem because they had saints that had such things. She wasn't specifically going against any church doctrine. There's a passage in the Old Testament that basically condemns cross-dressing, and so they tried to pin that on her. Very desperate, and she doesn't want to put a dress on. She wants she claims not to be a boy, but to wear the mantles of a soldier, maybe a male soldier. In any case, she does get probably tortured, no doubt, and persuaded to put one back on, and then she eventually recants and says no, and she's going to stand her ground. But I mean, it's interesting to see how in history you have these cases of women that defy gender roles, and you always kind of wonder. You think about Mulan, right? I wonder how many times that women did go off into wars, into battles, dressed as men, and just never got caught, and lived very successful lives. How many characters in history that we think of as men maybe were women who couldn't get their place there unless they pretended or put on male role. Do you remember when we early covered ancient Egypt? There was Hatshepsut, where she was a queen, but she had to rule as a king, so she had like depictions of herself with a beard. Um, so I mean, I think these are just kind of interesting things to ponder on, and the fact that the explicitness of male supremacy in history, barring women from things, when in fact women are taking the brunt of these wars, right? They're the ones getting raped and pillaged uh, um, more often than not, and yet they're being told they're not tough enough to fight in a war. No, they're putting childbirth. Oh, come on, no, right? Anyways, okay, so I'm gonna move on there and just kind of addressing, going back to that was a part of this whole Hundred Years' War that she was a part of. I mean, just look what England here had some small holdings and they wanted to hold on to, and the battle begins by 360. This is about as far as it gets in terms of English land holdings, and then by 1429, uh, more English land holdings, and then they get pushed out. And think about how much bloodshed and all this over some dispute over the right to rule. It's quite horrifying. Um, what it did do for the finale by 1453. So, this was 100 years of tit for tat. Um, by the way, keep in mind that North Korea and South Korea are still officially at war, and they just haven't actually had an actual battle since the 50s. So these things can happen like that. Um, Finally, England is going to be done with claiming anything on the continent. And it's going to allow English kings to just focus on being English and not looking somewhere else. Okay. And so if that's a positive aspect, if you want to put it that way, that is going to be at least one of the results and the perspectives of, the result is going to happen at the end here. So yeah, that's all I'll have to say about that. Okay, moving on. Here's some lovely battle depictions. Joan of Arc. I love Joan of Arc. Anyways, okay. An age of warfare. So we start seeing a shift at this time. And just now we're in the era of drone wars, right? We are. Well, that's a shift now. People are getting shot by these machines that are led by somebody that's a video game player, essentially. That's a new level. We're also in a nuclear age. That's another level. Every age has a shift of weaponry that changes the parameters of war. We see the rise of the use of foot soldiers, and gunpowder is starting to get put into use. Maybe one of the most deadly inventions to occur. When you talk about how much lives that have been lost over gunpowder over a period of time, makes you wonder. Just sometimes when it comes to technology inventions, are they positive or negative? I don't know. But here's what we see there. Okay. In terms of religion, we're going to switch gears. It's interesting, right, that it's called the Babylonian captivity of church and the Great Schism, referring to the Jewish Babylonian captivity, where the papal world went from being this all-powerful type of monarchy to now having rival popes. And as you were seeing in the text, that this really created a lot of problems and weakenings of the pope in the middle of all these other things, such as the plague and so on. And I really think that a lot of this that happened is going to leave the spaces open for people to start really feeling more comfortable to reinterpret and reassess what to make of the church in terms of its spiritual qualifications. And the church itself is going to have to kind of reevaluate things after a while. So some of the results of this, I watched one church theologian from the Catholic Church claim that the end result of this was for the church to be more separate from politics and free it up to focus on spirituality. I'll let you decide if you think that that's the case as we look into the history more often here. But I think this was definitely a kind of a big crisis for the church itself and the realm of its form of spirituality. So what ends up happening is people see things like the church needs to make money, so it starts selling people ways to get out of purgatory, doing things that are really going to be brought to attention in the Reformation. But even here, people are just not buying into certain things. And we have with John Wycliffe, a guy who is really the precursor to saying, you know, what's church tradition? Let's talk about scripture. And then this idea of having a Bible in the vernacular. This is something that people take for granted now. I mean, many Christians in America, especially evangelical, will have a copy of the Bible beat up with stickers on it and underlinings and highlights, um, as a sign of devotion. A very user friendly Bible, a Bible that you can take with you anywhere to McDonald's, right? Kind of thing. And I mean this like respectfully. In other words, the Bible is something that comes with you it attends to you, that you have a relationship with all the time. Well, back then, no one could really just have a copy of just any book like that. Anyways, it'd be expensive, but there was the sacred language of Latin for the church, and that's what the Bible is supposed to be written in. And I'll end right here, and I'll return to this thought in the next lecture.